What's up, fight fans? Welcome to my channel. This is Johnny, and in today's video we're going to be going over the statistics that nobody talks about when mentioning this weekend's world title fight at 147 pounds between the champion Brian Norman Jr. and the challenger Puerto Rican knockout artist Derrieck Cuevas. Guys, before I continue, I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to everybody who's been with me since day one. My YouTube analytics are telling me that 80% of you guys who watch my content haven't hit subscribe yet. Could you please do that? It'll help me out a lot. Also, like this video and be sure to hit the bell notification button so you can be notified every time I put something out that's new. Thank you. All right, guys, this is a world title fight at 147 pounds in Las Vegas this weekend. It's on the same card as Michaela Meyer and Sandy Ryan, the rematch. We know that Norman Jr. and Cuevas were supposed to fight late last year. Norman Jr. had a hand injury and he had to have surgery. We know Cuevas has been inactive. We haven't seen him fight since 2023. But guys, on paper, this is going to be a slugfest. You have Brian Norman Jr., who's 26-0 with 20 knockouts. You have Cuevas, who's 27-1 with 19 knockouts. So they almost have a combined 40 knockouts together. Something's got to give. Do your research on Cuevas, and you're going to realize that this guy, you might not know who he is. He might not have a household name, but he's slick, he has power, and all the tape I've watched on him, his lead hook is dangerous. Now, also, this is going to be his biggest step up in Norman Jr. We know we last saw Norman Jr. against Gio Santillan, where he had a late 10th round knockout in a fight to where he took a lot of shots, he took a lot of damage. Personally, I'd like to see him make some adjustments in terms of where he puts his head, how he moves his head off the center line. Sometimes you have young fighters, he's only 24 years old, he's fighting with that sort of ferocity and aggressive style, and the last thing on his mind is not taking damage. But as a fight fan, you want to see a 24-year-old at that young age make those adjustments so we could see this long, stellar career in which it looks like the trajectory thus far, he is on his way. In this video, we're going to break down both fighters. We're going to remind everybody who they are, talk a little bit about how they go about their business. Also, we're going to see where Las Vegas has these odds, where the bettors have their money. And guys, this is not a blowout by any means. This is not going to be one of those 9-1, 10-1 fights. So wait till the middle of the video. We'll get into that. Also, at the end, stay tuned. This is where I'll be making my prediction, telling you where I'm going to put my money. To get started, I want to remind everybody what this fight is all about and what to expect from both guys. Guys, Brian Norman Jr. is a 24-year-old welterweight title holder, originally from Decatur, Georgia. He sits at 26-0 with 20 knockouts and considered to be in the conversation with Jerome Boots Ennis, Ryan Garcia, and Devin Haney, among the best at 47. But by his own calculations, he's yet to earn his belt. After stopping Giovanni Santillan last May to secure an interim title, Norman wasn't elevated to full titleist until Bud Crawford vacated in August to move up in weight. And I quote, "I feel like a champion is not a champion until that first title defense," Norman said. "I've got a wonderful competitor coming against me, so it's time to prove that I'm the real deal champion." That competitor is Puerto Rico's Derrieck Cuevas, who sits at 27-1-1 with 19 knockouts. Cuevas, who's 30, hasn't fought in 15 months and has never faced an opponent on Norman's level. He was saddled with his only career loss in a 6-round split decision against Damian Ezekiel Benelli in 2020, but has posted 4 consecutive stoppage victories since, including most recently a 6-round TKO of Marlon Aguas in December 2023. Norman had been gunning for a much bigger fight, specifically fellow welterweight belt holder Jerome Ennis, before settling on Cuevas. But he said a fighter in Cuevas' shoes can be very dangerous, and I quote, "He's a very tough fighter," Norman said. "He's coming to change his life. This is a championship fight, so I know how he feels. He's thinking, all I have to do is win this one fight, and my whole life changes. He's very strong and powerful. He's coming to knock my head off. It's going to be a very good fight, but I don't think it'll be a long one." Cuevas was the only pick after negotiations between Norman and Ennis sides broke through last fall. And when the initial December 8th fight date was pushed back because of a Norman hand injury, Cuevas continued training and hasn't stopped since. That doesn't mean he's happy about it. He thought that maybe it was going to be an easy fight, Cuevas told Boxing Scene through a translator, and so he started using excuses, a hand injury, that's why the training camp was so long, to see if I would get discouraged. But on the contrary, we kept focused, we kept training, we stayed there, and now we're ready to fight. This is going to be an interesting and intriguing matchup, considering if you've watched Norman Jr.'s fights in terms of his last fight and some of the other ones on his way up. He's not always the most efficient fighter in terms of hit, and not get hit. He's going to stand there and trade. That's why his fans are excited, and that's why his star is on the rise. He's gonna fight off that front foot, and he wants to put you in a position where you have to fight him. That's why the Puerto Rican challenger, Cuevas, like I said, is an interesting matchup. His left hook is nasty. Now, we haven't seen him against high level competition, but like I said earlier, Brian Norman Jr. isn't necessarily the most defensively slick or defensively sound slugger in the division. So right now, I wanna take a little bit of a look at Derrieck Cuevas and see who he's been fighting. Guys, Cuevas comes in with a 27-1-1 record with 19 knockouts. He carries into the ring a 70% career knockout to win ratio. The 30-year-old Puerto Rican is an orthodox fighter standing at 5'9" with a 70-inch reach. We last saw him fight Marlon Aguas, 14-1 knockout in the 6th. Alberto Mosquera, 28-5 knockout in the 4th. Damian Rodriguez, 13-1 knockout in the 2nd. Carrera, 15-2 knockout in the 2nd. His only loss was to Benelli back in 2020, who was 23-8, a split decision loss in the 6th. Norman Jr. was elevated to full status because Bud went to 54 to fight Madrimov. So in Norman's eyes, this is the fight that makes him a champion. And in Cuevas' eyes, this is the fight that's going to change his career and change his life. He has a great record. At 30 years old, he's physically stout. He's physically strong. He's going to be the bigger guy. He's going to go in there and think that he's going to win. And stylistically, he's going to fight the fight that Norman wants him to fight. He's not going to run. He's not going to dance around. He's going to stay there. We're going to know real quick whose power is going to hold up, who's going to be more substantial, and the durability of both guys. That's going to be the important bit of the narrative of this fight, I feel, is who's going to be more durable. Who's going to be able to take those punches and turn it into offense. Let's take a closer look at what Brian Norman Jr. has been up to. Guys, Norman Jr. is 26-0 with 20 knockouts. He has a career 77% knockout to win ratio. And out of 2,464 welterweights in the world, he is ranked number 5. He's currently the WBO world champion. The 24-year-old American's an orthodox fighter standing at 5'8" with a 72-inch reach. We last saw him fight Gio Santillan, who was 32-0. Norman knocked him out in the 10th. Bakachika, 17-2. That was a no contest. Randall, 13-0 UD in the 10th. Campos, 24-4 UD in the 8th. Correa, 10-4 UD in the 8th. With Brian Norman Jr., as you've seen him step up his competitions, the knockouts have been subsiding a bit. He did get Santillan out of there in his last fight. It took him a while, but the fights leading up into that fight, he was winning decisions. It's wild to think he's only 24 years old. And that division, 147, now, most people will say it's not the most exciting division since Bud left, but when you have young fighters like Norman Jr., who's 24, who's a champion, that instantly makes it exciting. You got Boots Ennis, who's young as well, and then you got names like Devin Haney, who's entering that division. So there's big fights to be made for whoever wins this fight. You're going to have to think that Norman Jr. is going to want to do the same thing as he always does, force his opponent on their back foot, use the jab to set up the power, and just trade shot for shot. And this is where we talk about why the kid's nickname is the Assassin, because he goes in there to knock his opponents out. When I look at these guys side by side, Norman Jr. is not going to be the taller or physically bigger guy, but he will have the reach advantage. We'll see how much he uses that. He's not really known for jab, 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 pop, get in the pocket. He's known for take one, give one, throw a backhand, and hurt his opponent. We'll see what happens when these two square up in the center of the ring. Right now, Las Vegas has this fight at only a 4-1 favorite odds, meaning that Cuevas is the underdog. But when you look at the last few fights, the last few cards, even the main event fights, you're seeing 8-1, 9-1, even 10-1. I mean, going into the Roach Tank fight, Roach was a 14-1 underdog. So these odds have some people thinking about, who is this Cuevas guy? Why is Norman Jr. only a 4-1 favorite? Right now, I'm going to take a closer look at that money line bet and talk a little bit about the odds down here in Australia. All right, guys, the betting app I use is called Sportsbet. On the money line, if you take Brian Norman Jr. to win and you put $100 on him, you get 23 in return. If you take Cuevas to win, you get 480 on return on a $100 bet. So it's more closer to a 5-1 underdog than a 4-1. I correct myself. The draw is 17-1 if you guys feel it's going to go the decision and both guys didn't, and neither one did enough to prove who's the victor. Now, the method of victory will add a little bit more juice on our bet. Brian Norman Jr. to win points or decision is 270, so 100 gets you 270 back, meaning that if you take that bet outright or on a parlay and Norman Jr. gets a knockout, you lose. Now, Brian Norman Jr. by knockout is 2-1. Cuevas by points or decision, 10-1, 100 gets you 1,000. Cuevas by knockout, 7-1, which is interesting. Both guys are knockout artists. Now, the way the money sits, all the bettors are picking either one to win by knockout, considering Both guys have almost 40 knockouts collectively on their record. Now, when I'm thinking about where I'm going to put my money, I have to be honest, I am a little bit hesitant to just go in and 100% confidently say that I think Brian Norman Jr. is going to win. He's going to be tested. What we saw in his last fight against Santian, and this is just a theory of mine, I feel that some of the issues and some of the struggles that Norman Jr. had with Santian maybe told his camp that he might not be ready yet for that jump up against Jaron Ennis. So I'm thinking that this is actually a great fight for him and his development to once again use Cuevas as a measuring stick to see where he's at in that maturation. I fully expect him to be ready. I hope his hand's 100%. He's gonna have to use it against the Puerto Rican slugger. I am gonna take Brian Norman Jr. to win this fight. Is he gonna win by knockout? Is he gonna win by decision? I'm gonna just take the money line, the safe bet, put it on a parlay. Stay tuned to the channel. I'll show you all the fights on this card because we documented all of them, starting with the Tiger Johnson fight all the way up to the Michaela Meyer and Sandy Ryan fight. And if you guys haven't seen the breakdown and my prediction on that rematch between two of the best 147-pound females in the world, stay tuned to the channel because that's coming up right now.